are we seeing the beginning of the Gog-Magog war prophesied in the book of Ezekiel? Jimmy Evans shares insight you don't want to miss. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying Table Talk. And remember to click that notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest content.
An ancient prophecy unfolding in modern headlines. The world descending into chaos. A great deception masquerading as peace. As a new regime rises, a leader will usher in lawlessness, setting up the final chapter of human history. Welcome to the end times.
Well, there's a new conflict that is gripping the headlines of people caught in the fight for their lives. Are we seeing the potential unfolding of the setup of the Gog and Magog war? Well, today, with the help of our special guest, we'll take a look at these questions as well as how this aligns with the end times. But first, joining me around the table is Kendra Kelly Dean. Are you ready?
Let me tell you, it's like all my life we've talked about the end times, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm actually living in a day where I am seeing for myself pieces of the puzzle fit.
Yeah.
You know, lining up like this is the full picture is about to be here. And this is such an important show. And I really hope people pay attention and maybe rewatch it and make notes because God is coming soon. It's going to be awesome when he does.
Yes. Dorothy Newton, I mean, it is exciting. I mean, you see darkness, but at the same time, you see light penetrating the darkness.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't want anybody left behind.
I know.
I want
That's
people,
why I'm here.
you know, you're never too late. Do it, you know, believe,
That's
you know,
right.
accept God. We got to do it.
Cindy Johnston, think about that song. People get ready.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's what I was
Jesus
saying.
is coming. Soon we'll be going home.
I knew some of those words. But I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready when he comes.
I mean, we are seeing so many significant signs of the time, are we?
We are. And
Yeah.
to know that God loved us so much that he gave us his word to help us be prepared.
Absolutely. Cindy Murdoch, I think this is probably one of our favorite guests
Oh my goodness.
that we've had many times here on the table.
I am so grateful for his passion,
Yes.
for prophecy, for understanding the end times.
for helping us understand it in a way that we can understand it.
Exactly.
practical,
and where
yeah.
reality and prophecy come together, it
Yeah.
just makes it so
It
unbelievably
does.
creative.
It does. Well, he is one of our favorite guests, especially when it comes to talking about the end times. Please welcome our dear friend, Jimmy Evans. Here he comes. We got the right music for him as he's walking in, folks. It sounds like end time music.
Hello, everybody. Some end time music, that's right. Good to
Do you
be
feel
here.
like jogging in or what?
No, I do not feel like I never feel like jogging.
You did
It's
the walk
ugly
in.
when I
You did
jog.
the walk in well. Well, if you turn on any news channel today, and you're going to likely see a report or a story about the current conflict happening in Ukraine. Well, is this simply a local issue, or is there potentially something bigger on the horizon? Well, today Jimmy's here to help us answer that question. Let's talk a little bit. I mean, this is like right up to date. Ukraine. There's a battle going on between Russia and the Ukraine. How does that fit into Bible prophecy?
In a big way, Russia, the Ukraine is not necessarily important prophetically as it relates to being identified.
Right. It's important to God, but you're just saying as it relates to prophecy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mark 13, Jesus was asked by the disciples when the end would come. And Jesus answered them. He began to say, take heed that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name saying, I am he, and will deceive many. But when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled. For such things must happen, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines and troubles. These are the beginning of birth pains. So the interesting thing to me about the Ukraine is famines. Now, famines is both a birth pain of the end times, but it's also a major feature of the tribulation. And so the Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe, and they will not be able to plant their crops this spring, okay, because of the Russian invasion. The farmers aren't safe to go out and plant their crops. Well, right now they're rationing grain in Lebanon and Syria because they buy their grain from Ukraine.
Wow.
Well, Russia and the Ukraine together export about a third of the world's grain. So Russia, of course, they're under sanctions. So they can't export like they normally could. China has now had their worst growing season ever But the United States, 71% of our present winter wheat crop has been affected by drought. So, see, COVID caused supply chain issues. Well, you went to your grocery store and saw empty shelves for the first time in your life.
Yes.
Okay? And so there's been supply chain issues already. Now there's lack of supply. So you've got China. China cannot feed their own people. They have to import food from all over the world. And so you see the head of the UN World Food Bank last year said, if we don't have billions of dollars pumped into the World Food Bank, we will see in the next few years famines of biblical proportions. So the Ukraine is an extremely significant nation as it relates to them not being able to plant, which means next fall they won't be able to reap, and they won't be able to supply all the grain that they supply to so many people, besides Russia itself. So Jesus said, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famines, there'll be earthquakes, there'll be pestilences, is the word for troubles there. So we're coming out of a 2-year pandemic. So you're just seeing nation rise against nation, China, Taiwan, Iran, Israel, all these things that are happening. So to me, Ukraine is important in the sense that they're a major part of the setting up of the birth pains, okay? Russia is major importance in the scripture. So
Russia is Magog.
Russia, that's right. Russia is made up of Magog. Now, the old Soviet Union was Russia, Rosh, and we're going to read about it here in Ezekiel 38. Magog is made up of like Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan. It's the Stan Club. If you name ain't Stan, don't apply. And so, but that's Magog in the scriptures.
Okay.
But it says of Rosh. Let me read this because this is against a man, and this is important to understand. Gog is a man. Magog is his country. Is part of the.
I'm so glad you made that clear because I don't know if I ever realized Gog was a man.
I didn't either.
And I believe that, we're going to talk about who Gog is, but it says, now the word of the Lord came to me saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the prince. Gog is the prince of Rosh, Russia. Meshech and Tubal, prophesy against him and say, thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and lead you out with all your army horses and horsemen, all splendidly clothed, a great company with bucklers and shield, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya are with them. All of them are with shield and helmet. Gomer and all of its troops from the house of Togarmah from the far north, and its troops, many people are with you. So it tells us that there is a coalition of nations under the control of this man named Gog. Okay, so this is all about Gog. God hates this man Gog, and he's against him. But he's the prince of Russia and Meshech and Tubal, which were like southern Russia, part of modern-day Turkey. And so let me talk about the players here, because now, if you ask me today who I believe Gog is, it's Vladimir Putin. Because you can see he's an evil man, what he's doing right now. And the Ukraine is not his end game. And so he's an evil man, former KGB agent, absolutely vicious. They don't threaten people in Russia, they just kill them. And you had this beautiful model who said something bad about Vladimir Putin, and they found her dead in a suitcase. And so he terrorizes his own people. He's talking about a cleansing, that Russia needs a new cleansing to get rid of all the traitors and stuff like that. That's what Stalin said before he killed millions of people. So this is a bad dude. Now, if this is a present prophecy, I would say Vladimir Putin fits the bill. If it's a future prophecy, it could be somebody else. Okay, but he's Gog-ish if he's not Gog.
It's kind of like for every generation, you could have had an Antichrist.
That's exactly right.
So,
That's exactly right, yeah. But the difference is the existence of Israel. And we're going to talk about Israel here in just a minute. Every generation has had an Antichrist figure. And World War II had the Adolf Hitler, killed 6 million Jews. And so, but Israel didn't exist as a nation. So the countries, we just read these ancient names of these countries. Persia is Iran. People from Iran are not Arabs, they're Persians. And they're precious people. There is a revival happening right now in the Middle East, in Persia, in Iran. Many Iranians are getting saved
Same
right
thing
now.
in China, underground
Same
church.
thing in China, same thing in Russia. So you can't blame people for their crazy leaders. And so you say a person's from Iran or they're from Russia, most of those people are precious people. They just have, crazy leaders. But Iran, today, Iran is building a nuclear weapon that they're going to fire at Israel. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Gomer, Togarmah, Meshech, and Tubal are all present-day Turkey. And by the way, when it says you come from the far north, if you take a map, and I think we're going to put a map up right now, but when you look from Israel, by the way, when the Bible gives directions, it always gives them from Jerusalem. Okay, so north means north of Jerusalem. So if you take Jerusalem and go far north, that's Moscow. You hit Moscow. Russia is to the far north of Israel. Turkey is right below Russia there. And so Libya is modern-day Libya. It's northern Africa. Ethiopia is modern-day Sudan in northern Africa. And this is many other people are with you, like Syria and stuff like that. Well, all these people today are aligned with Vladimir Putin. This is interesting, because this was written 2,600 years ago. They're all aligned with Vladimir Putin, and they all hate Israel.
Wow.
And so the geopolitical makeup of the world 2,600 years ago was prophesied, and it's exactly what we see today. Here's another very interesting thing. I'm not going to read it in Ezekiel 38. It says, when this Gog and Magog coalition comes against Israel, that Sheba, Dedan, Tarshish, and her young lions will challenge them. And they'll say, what are you up to? Are you coming down here to take plunder? Sheba, Dedan, that is the Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar. These are all pro-Western countries right there in the Middle East with all these other countries. And so when these Gog and Magog nations invade Israel, the pro-Western nations are going to say, what are you up to?
Yeah.
Are you coming down here to take
What's
plunder?
your intention?
They're not going to join in the coalition. And again, geopolitically, that's exactly the way the world looks right now.
What about Sudan and Egypt? Because I was looking at that, and they're in the northeastern part of Africa. And what significance is that? I know.
The Sudan is Muslim and they hate Israel. Egypt and Israel are at peace right now, and Egypt is buying natural gas from Israel. So is Jordan. So Jordan and Egypt are at peace with Israel right now. Libya and the Sudan. Now these Abraham Accords, they're kind of making some amends around there. The Saudi Peninsula, especially, they're doing the Abraham Accords. But,
Which that was a big deal from our last administration, but it didn't get much news.
It's a huge deal. That didn't get a lot of attention because President Trump is the one that did it. But it's a big deal what's happening. By the way, the Sudan, and I heard an expert on Africa say the Sudan and Libya are the only two countries in Africa that won't recognize Israel.
Wow.
And again, you look at the scriptures, and 2,600 years ago, it's telling you the nations that are going to be against Israel. So there's a coalition, and they're going to attack.
So this is Islam, and not only Islam, but the spiritual significance of the enemy, the prince and power of the air that wants to destroy Israel.
That's right.
For a lot of reasons.
That's right.
But it's a combination of all of that, isn't it? It's the hatred.
Yes, well, there's two agendas. So we're talking about why they're attacking. I'm going to continue to read in Ezekiel 38, because this is going to tell us the motive in them attacking. Prepare yourself and be ready, you and all your companies that are gathered about you, and be a guard for them. After many days you will be visited. In the latter years you will come into the land of those brought back from the sword. The latter years is last days. That's why the Old Testament says last days. In the latter years you will come into the land of those brought back from the sword and gathered from many people on the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They were brought out of the nations, and now all of them dwell safely. You will ascend, coming like a storm, covering the land like a cloud, you and all your troops and many peoples with you. Thus says the Lord God, on that day it shall come to pass that thoughts will arise in your mind, and you will make an evil plan. You will say, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages to a peaceful people who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, having neither bars nor gates, to take plunder and to take booty, to stretch out your hand against the waste places that are again inhabited, and against a people gathered from the nations who have acquired livestock and goods who dwell in the midst of the land. So there are three reasons for the attack. The first is to take plunder and booty, to come and take the riches away from Israel. The second reason is to come and take the land back that was desolate and is now inhabited by the Jews. The third reason is to kill the Jews, to come against the people who have been gathered back. So you have three purposes, but you have two groups of people invading. There are the Russians. They're not Muslims. Okay, most Russians are not Muslim. Now, the former Soviet Union, about half of it was Muslim, the Stan states. And so, but you have the Muslims in Iran, Turkey, all these countries. But then you have the Russians, okay, two separate agendas. You say, well, what's Russia's agenda?
Yeah.
So Russia sells Europe a third of their natural gas. They sell them a lot of oil. Now, until last week, we bought 100,000 barrels of oil a day from Russia. So Russia has all of this energy, but they can't sell it now because they were building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline from Russia to Germany. The European continent is very dependent upon Russia for their energy, and they hate being dependent on Russia because he manipulates them and controls them. Okay?
Right.
So, by the way, when he invaded the Ukraine, he shut off half of their gas before in the dead of winter. People are dying of hypothermia. Oh, it's very cold over in that area of the world.
Right.
So he cut off half of their gas before he invaded them just to weaken them even further. And so Germany shut down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline when Russia invaded the Ukraine. They shut it down. Billions and billions of dollars lost for Vladimir Putin.
Right.
Plus, he's losing oil business from around the world. So it says here that they're going to come to take plunder and booty. Now, Israel is about the size of the state of New Jersey. If you put Israel in Lake Michigan, you'd have room left over. Tiny, tiny little nation. So you asked me 10 years ago, you would say, well, Jimmy, what does Israel have that is so valuable that Russia and these other nations would attack it to get it? And I would just say, unless you enjoy swimming in the Dead Sea, I don't know. I mean, I just can't tell you. Well, Israel in the last 7 or 8 years has discovered 32 trillion cubic feet of natural gas off its coast in 2 oil fields. The largest field is called Leviathan. And so 32 trillion cubic feet of natural gas is a whole bunch of natural gas. So Russia has all this natural gas. They can't sell it now. So now their #1 competitor in the world is the tiny nation of Israel. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah,
Then you have another group of people, and the Muslims. Let me talk specifically about Iran. Now, Iran is not Iran. Iran is the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran is not run by politicians. They have a parliament. They're run by mullahs and the Ayatollah. It would be like the Congress of the United States being controlled by a group of pastors, with one pastor being over them. In other words, whatever Congress decides can be overruled by the pastors. And so they're a religious country. They're an Islamic nation. And they have a theology. They have an eschatology. Eschatology is the study of the end times. So, you know, my eschatology, we teach, you know, all the time on Table Talk. Their eschatology is this.
Which is based on the Bible.
Which is based on the Bible. Their eschatology is based on the Quran. And they believe that they must destroy Israel. Now, this is their belief. This is their religious belief, that Allah has called them to destroy Israel and to usher in the end times. When Israel is destroyed, the hidden imam, their Messiah, will come into Jerusalem with Jesus, and Jesus will then disclose to the world that he's a Muslim and call on the world to convert to Islam. Muslims are people. Islam is the religion they practice. And so he will call on the world to become Muslims. And so that's their end time theology, but they have to destroy Israel. So Iran, and Joni and I were talking before the show about what is the most dangerous thing happening, the most significant thing happening in the world right now. Well, it's Iran, because Iran has been enriching uranium for years. Everybody knows it. And but they've been, because they want to destroy
Even
Israel.
when they had to deal with us, they were still doing it. Everyone knows. Israel knew they were still doing it.
Absolutely.
And this crazy deal that was undone by the past administration that now is being resurrected by the present administration is insane.
It's insane. We're going to pay them billions and billions and billions of dollars. Let them keep their centrifuges. Let them keep all their nuclear material.
No accountability.
No accountability. The deal was only for 2.5 years, by the way. And it's like tying a pork chop around your neck so the dog will play with you. I mean, you have to be really desperate to do what we're doing, paying your enemy billions of dollars to do the right thing. Last summer, Benny Gantz, who's the defense minister of Israel, said Iran is 8 weeks away from having enough enriched uranium to build one bomb. Okay. Well, this is a long time more than 8 weeks to right now, because we're in March of 2022. And so most of the intelligence community believes they have enough enriched uranium for at least one bomb. Well,
and Israel has spies in there that know everything that's going on. And as soon as they get that ready, Israel has to respond.
Yep, they do. And see, they didn't have a delivery mechanism for a nuclear warhead until last month. And I think we have a picture of a bomb that we're going to show here, but they developed this bomb. And you'll notice on this bomb, there's an Arabic inscription on the left side of the bomb. They named the bomb after a battle where the Muslims defeated the Jews. In other words, they built the bomb and put Israel's name on it.
Wow.
And so here's the reason this is so important. They are an existential threat to Israel. Israel cannot let them get in possession of a nuclear weapon.
Right.
They've said it 1,000,000 times. We're going to kill you.
Right.
You're Satan. You know, America's the great Satan. They're the little Satan. We're going to kill you. Their theology. We have to destroy you to usher in our Messiah.
They said they were going to use it to send it to Israel and destroy Israel.
Yeah.
They've said that statement over and over. Israel knows that.
They have made statement after statement of their intention to destroy Israel. You know, if your neighbor says, hey, I hate you, I'm going to go in my garage over here and build a gun, put your name on it.
And why would we help them do that? Why are we helping?
Well, it's insane. I mean, really, you can't explain it. It's just it's so crazy.
It's because there is a spirit guiding.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is not God.
Yeah,
I mean, it is the spirit of the Antichrist.
It's the spirit of it absolutely is. And it's all setting up. You see God pulling the strings, and the end times is being set up, and America is being weakened. Our withdrawal from Afghanistan showed the world that we're not ready for prime time, and that we had left $95 billion worth of military equipment in there for a bunch of radical Muslims.
You will
to
go
take
down
over.
as one of the greatest mistakes this administration ever made.
Yes, and it incentivized every enemy that we have, especially Russia and China.
And by the way, I was going to tell you, someone had mentioned something about, I don't think Christian networks should talk about politics. And one of the things I heard the best responses. Pastor, he said, well, politics affect policies or bring policies, and policies affect people.
That's right.
And as long as policies affect people and the very policies you're talking about, then we're going to talk about it. And the church is really commanded to do so, and the Bible talked about it.
Absolutely. We're the salt of the world.
Yes.
We're the light of the world. And the problem is when you're partisan. There's partisan politics, and there's just ideologies. And so being anti-Israel is an example of this, okay? Why would you be anti-anybody? The Palestinians are an example of this. God loves the Palestinians.
Yes.
But the Palestinian leaders are evil.
Right.
They're anti-Israel. They want to destroy Israel. Israel doesn't want to destroy anybody.
Yeah.
Israel just wants a strip of land to live in peace, and they can't find it.
Right.
And so these ideologies are very important. But then you have Iran. Again, the people of Iran are precious, okay? The leaders are demonic.
Yeah.
They're demonically inspired. They want to destroy another nation. They live and breathe to destroy another nation. You have to stand against that.
So Israel is going to attack.
This is my
Iran.
personal opinion. Okay, God says, I'm going to put a hook in your jaw. This is an animal hook. So when you had a stubborn animal that wouldn't do what you wanted it to do, you put a hook in its jaw and just drug it around. So God is saying, Gog, you have no choice in this. This is not your choice.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use you, and I'm going to provoke you. I'm going to do something to provoke you, and I'm going to drag you down to the mountains of Israel with all these people you control that hate Israel. I'm going to drag you down there, and God is going to personally destroy them. But I believe the hook in the jaw is when Israel attacks Iran. So listen, Israel has put in their budget this year $5 billion to bomb Iran. Israel has been conducting massive military drills practicing bombing Iran. Israel told Russia, okay, the prime minister of Israel told Vladimir Putin, we will bomb Iran if they continue to enrich uranium. We will not let them get enough enriched uranium to bomb us. They told the same thing to the United States. So they have announced to everyone, hey, listen, guys, we're getting ready to bomb Iran. So Russia has helped Iran. Russia and Iran are very close. So Vladimir Putin, we're putting these sanctions on him. And a couple of weeks ago, he came to the United States through his ambassador and said, you can't sanction our dealings with Iran. We'll take all your sanctions, but you can't sanction our dealings. They have a very strong relationship with Iran, and Russia has helped to build all of the nuclear installations in Iran, and there are Russian scientists all through the nuclear program in Iran. When Israel bombs Iran, they're going to kill a bunch of Russians. And Vladimir Putin has already said, do not touch Iran to the United States and Israel. They've warned us repeatedly, if you do, we will respond. So here you have the Muslim.
That's Magog right there.
That's
That is the battle in Ezekiel.
I believe that this is what is, I don't think that there's going to be a European theater at this point, that type of World War III that we saw in World War II in the European theater. What I believe is about to happen is very soon, I believe that the war in Ukraine will drag on, the negotiations will drag on. I believe you're going to see Israel bomb Iran. I just don't think they can wait very long. Even these negotiations have been happening in Vienna. The people putting together the negotiations have said, we have a very short window of negotiations. What does that mean? They're about to get nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And so once they get the nuclear capability, the conversation's over.
Okay, so you're talking about all this. Where does this lie in Bible prophecy as it relates to the rapture of the church and the 7-year tribulation?
That's a good question, because different people have different ideas. Now, so there are four requirements for the invasion, okay, according to Ezekiel 38. Israel must be restored back to their land after it had long been desolate. They've been desolate for almost 2,000 years. Check that box. Israel must have come back to the land from many nations. You have to remember now, the first time that Israel was dispossessed in around 500 BC, they went to Babylon. And when they came back from Babylon. They went to one nation, they came back one nation. But in AD 70, when the Romans defeated them, they were scattered the world.
Scattered.
Yeah. So now they're coming back from all the nations of the world.
Including Ukraine.
Including Ukraine. They must be dwelling securely. Now, this is an interesting thought here. And they must be prosperous. They're filthy rich. Israel is extremely rich. So they must be dwelling securely. The only debate of when this can happen, in other words, there are some people that say this can't happen yet because they're not dwelling securely. They're dwelling very securely. Israel's at peace with Egypt. They're at peace with Jordan. They're an extremely powerful nation. They've got the thugs, the Hezbollah and Hamas, and those people kind of harassing them. They're very secure where they are right now. Some people believe that this is going to happen in the first half of the tribulation when there's a peace treaty between the Antichrist and Israel. It could be. My personal opinion is it's about to happen. It will happen sometime around the rapture, because this is going to set up the peace agreement between Israel and the Antichrist. Then this is my opinion. I believe in the aftermath of this battle, see, God destroys Gog and all the nations with him. Israel doesn't fire a bullet. And so God's...
Is that in that valley of Armageddon?
It doesn't say, it says on the mountains of Israel.
On the mountains.
And so now, by the way, the Megiddo, the Valley of Armageddon, that is the second coming.
Okay.
That's at the end of the tribulation.
Where the blood is.
That's right. I think it was Napoleon said that the Valley of Megiddo is the best battlefield on planet Earth. His favorite. It's just this flat land that goes on forever, that literally the armies of the world will come and gather there. Now, Jerusalem is the point of battle. This is where the second coming, when Jesus comes. The significant thing It's happening right now. According to Zechariah 12 and Zechariah 14 and Joel chapter 3, the last battle on earth in this age will be in Jerusalem, where all the nations of the world gather against Jerusalem. The pressure right now is for Israel to give up East Jerusalem. They won't do it.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, the United Nations will come together, try to force them to do it. And this is literally when Jesus returns.
Okay, well, you know what? We're out of time, but we're going to do another program. So you can see the other program tomorrow. But listen, I want you to remember that the end times are not a season for the church to fear. Because as the world gets darker, the light shines brighter. So I want you to pray and ask the Lord, what is my role in this time, in this season? What are you leading me to do? What is your plan? What is your purpose for my life? It's very important that we as Christians find out what that is and we fulfill that purpose. And again, as always, if there's a need in your life, or maybe you want someone to pray with you, maybe you're not ready to meet the Lord and you say, you know what, I want to pray the salvation prayer. That's why that toll-free number is on the screen. We have prayer partners that are standing by that know how to pray with you, know how to encourage you. You can also go to daystar.com, click on prayer, and you can send your prayer request in that way. We pray for all the prayer requests that come into Daystar. I want to thank Jimmy for joining us at the table. For more on his ministry, lots of great information, visit him online at endtimes.com. And also remember to join the conversation online by leaving us a comment on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. We always love hearing from you. Tune in tomorrow. Jimmy's going to answer more of your end time question, and we're going to continue this discussion. I want to thank you so much for watching. Set your VCR, your DVR, all of that. You don't want to miss tomorrow. Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for today.